Achilles?
My christened name. Yeah, don't use the Achilles bit.
You don't want to use that?
No, I'm very happy to use it, but I'm called James. Christened Achilles James rather than James Achilles.
And the last name is Daunt.
It's Daunt.
And you are the managing director of Waterstones, the largest and the only chain?
It's the only chain of any
size.
Substance here. We have a small academic chain, Blackwell's.
Yes.
We have the university branches. That's only academic.
Well, they do sell general as
and
well.
They have a wonderful shop in Oxford.
You took over as the managing director of Waterstones in 2011. Prior to that, you set up, it started with one in Marylebone, an outlet absolutely stunning. The first time I ever came across it was in Taschen came out with a book, and you were in it. Anyway, perhaps you could tell me a little bit about that enterprise to start with.
Well, I set up Daunt Books when I was pretty young. So I left university, joined a bank.
JP Morgan?
Unimaginatively, JP Morgan, simply on the basis that it got me to New York, which sounded pretty fun, and they paid a ludicrous amount of money even then.
Unfulfilling?
No, I find it hugely fulfilling, actually. I'm ashamed to say I fell for it hook, line and sinker. You're 23 or whatever I was, 22. It was all very good fun and challenging and demanding. But I had a girlfriend who had gone the other way and had joined a development charity, and she thought it was pants. And quite rightly said that it was all about money, which is really very dull. And she thought that I ought to do something more interesting with my life, so I left.
And join her, right? In England as opposed to...
But JP Morgan's all over the world, so they don't care where you work. So no, it was simply working extremely long hours, however interesting that might be for the individual, which it is. It's really not great for the wider relationship as it was then. And
what's so interesting about it?
You work very hard. You're challenged you're given a huge amount of responsibility. And it was it was a very interesting time to be young, because IBM came out with the first personal computer, the IBM XT, which was given to the young guys coming in, which I was one, which suddenly meant you were working on projects where the guys older than you were literally doing it on handheld tap-tap calculators. And if you're competing with somebody who's got a PC, you're toast. So that generation was pure luck. They rose very quickly to dominate simply because they had the machines. So that's quite fun and exciting. So you get a lot of responsibility very young, and so it was fun. I enjoyed it, but I was not, it wasn't compatible with with a nice domestic life. So I left, and then sort of scratched my head about what I was going to do. And I like reading, I like traveling. And I thought about various things to do with traveling, couldn't quite see how they worked, and so I opened up a bookshop. But I was young, I was 24 then. It took me a little while to get it really working, because I had no money, or very little money.
Despite the aristocratic background, or maybe you had a great big house that sapped all the money out of the family, or?
No, I think that was a long time ago.
Because you've got the aristocracy that have got these gorgeous houses.
That ain't us. My father was a civil servant.
Okay.
So definitely not. They live in the same house in which I was born. So we're very modest middle class, standard middle class.
But the name Daunt, I mean, you do have some interesting.
Yeah, it's an Anglo-Irish family, but sort of that was all definitely frittered well before it got to me.
Okay. So you weren't born with a silver spoon?
No silver spoon, sadly.
Right.
Then, very sensibly, there was something called a business expansion scheme. The government gave tax breaks to people who invested in start-up businesses, and I went round with a begging bowl, and various people put in a relatively small amount of money, but some capital. So that's how I set up. And opened in this very nice bookshop on Marylebone High Street, beautiful premises, but quite small. And it was a disaster to begin with. And it took about 5 years to make it profitable and get it to work. And that was largely around taking on a rent at the top of a retail economic cycle. Then we went into the depression, which we had a retail depression in the sort of precipitated by the first Gulf War. Everything closed down. It was a very bad location, and it's difficult to sort of remember now that New York was a pretty grimy place back then. London was really pretty grimy, and Marylebone High Street was, we were one of 3 or 4 shops that were actually open and trading in 92, 93. Of course, that then changed, and London changed, and retail changed, and Marylebone High Street changed.
Now it's a Tony.
And now it's a really, smart, shishi place. But there are plenty of places in New York that I could think of, and no doubt, I don't know Canadian cities, but I bet you downtown Toronto, places where you can buy any number of fancy coffees at a huge price, would have given you sort of a beer in a bag if you were lucky back then. So, life changes. So I set up the bookshop. It was very small.
A literary bookshop with a global perspective, distinctive stock, cultured ambience, and informed staff.
Yeah, and the staff, my sort of first employee is still working there. My second employee is actually just retired, but was there until last year when she has an older husband, so she's retired. So we have very good long-term staff. We invest in nice people. We're friends as well as colleagues. It's a really intelligent shop, but not a snobby shop. And taxi drivers, I always think one of the marks of whether the shop's doing well is London taxi drivers have badges on them and you know who they are, and as long as you've got taxi drivers coming in as well as all the shishi people in Marylebone, you're doing all right. And I think we have a very approachable shop. It's a small shop, but we then took next door, so becoming a less small shop, but it's still in, compared to a Waterstones or something, it's a small shop, but it does an enormous amount of sales out of it, and it's very friendly, very active, very dynamic, very good staff.
So that's one of the, talking about your role as a bookseller, one of the keys then is to invest in your staff, pick the right staff, that's, but to make sure that they're welcoming and accommodating.
Yeah, knowledgeable, and that they are immersed in you need a culture within your business, within your bookselling business, where you do have very good staff who are knowledgeable, want to be there, are invested with a genuine passion. I know it's a cliche that's trotted out, but you really need it, and are looking out for their customers always. And I think certainly at Daunt Books we have that.
Wanting to put the right book in their hands.
Yeah, wanting to put the right book in their hands, not minding who the customer is, not minding actually, frankly, whether the customer's buying books or not, but want them to have a very nice time in their shop and do the best by them, but also are energetic as well and are running events and programs and understanding and being able to interpret as people come into their shop who they are, what they're looking for, and also if you do that right, you become a magnet for all age groups and also for authors. And it's I think one of the things that makes Daunt Books work is that it feeds off the energy of its customers, and the customers include a huge diversity of ages and ethnicities, and includes a lot of very talented writers amongst them. And I think being able to feed off that collective energy is hugely important. So we run lots and lots of events.
So, but how do you feed off that energy?
I think customers, because for example, you run, and we've always run a huge events program, so talks which are about building relationships with authors, connecting our customers to those authors, and that creates an energy. But those authors also then become our customers. It's a symbiotic relationship, and I think that when you come into the shop, something's going on. Everybody's enjoying themselves, the staff are enjoying themselves, customers are enjoying themselves, and actually, ironically, I think one of the things that also makes that shop work is it's very small. So, it's quite intense being in there. You go in there on a Saturday, you can hardly move.
Right, which isn't the experience I necessarily want in a bookstore.
No, but
you want, I guess, because the more people, the better.
I think there's that. I think you have quiet shops and you have really busy shops, but there is something quite magical about a busy shop where you don't feel pressured, where you don't feel hassled.
Yeah.
But where everybody's having a good time and enjoying themselves, and bouncing off each other as much as they are off the staff. We don't have, for example, we have no music in that shop, but it feels quite a sort of a buzzing place because people are talking, and customers do talk to each other when that's provoked and it's going on all the time. So I think that shop is pretty special in terms of just the sheer energy going on in it. But I opened up other shops, and they have I've got neighbourhood shops which are sort of quiet, and it's all about sort of knowing how the cat's getting on, and did it go well at the vet yesterday? And
right.
How's your mum? And has little Timmy managed to pass his exams and move up, and all of those things. And if you're doing it for a very long time, of course, it becomes generational. Certainly at Marylebone, at the point at which I left it, already those children that I first sold books to had become the adults that I was now selling books to, and that's very special as well.
So you're not tired of it?
Well, I then took on this job, which is a very different job, which has sort of taken me away from that kind of day-to-day relationship. I used to just work in Marylebone. I was a shop floor bookseller, and I knew everybody coming in through the door.
So it was really, for you, it was a social life.
Very much so, and I think good bookshops are. I mean, they are very, very social places, and I think maybe there are a few flagship metropolitan shops where it's not the case, but most bookshops should have a relationship with the people walking through the door. With not all of them, because you've got new people only passing through, people who only come into a bookshop 3 or 4 times a year, but a core of customers who are visiting you all the time, not perhaps daily, but certainly weekly. So you know their name and you know what they read last time, and that's what being a bookseller is. And I think it's hugely rewarding and engaging if that's your primary motivation for doing the job.
So the reason for its success is to cultivate what we've just talked about. Like you say, that's the main reason?
Yes, I think it's all around people. I think it's also around selling books. So certainly at Daunt Books, one of my absolutely sort of key things, which continues in the shop, is we sell books. I mean, we sell a lot of volume, and we like discovering books. And when we discover them and we like them, we sell bucket loads of them, and we will sell 1,000 copies of a book. When, as you know, in the United Kingdom, I think an average first novel will sell 500, 600, 700 copies, when you can have a single independent shop, relatively small, that can sell you 1,000 copies of something that would otherwise sell very little. And
that's just proof that you're doing something.
Oh yeah, we do, and we've made authors, and we've absolutely nailed books time and again, and we're well ahead of the curve of identifying the up and coming writers and who they are, and I think we've made careers, which I think is also hugely satisfying and an important part of what we do. But also our customers like it as well, because they know they bought some of the very first copies that were sold of authors who are now really successful and substantial.
In a way, you're like a reader in a publishing house. You read what comes out, and then your taste is then passed along to the customers.
Well, for sure. I think our great advantage is we don't care who publishes a book.
No,
we don't
but you've got a wide range of books to read and choose from.
Much wider than a publisher has. They're having to fish and take whatever gets on the end of the hook, whereas we can survey the entire thing. And I think it's hugely important for booksellers to be reading all the time, and be sort of confident in their judgments. And one of the difficulties of chain bookstores is that they're so bad at that, and that was sort of removed from any part of the notion of being a chain bookseller, which was all then about relationships with publishers, and publishers telling them what they wanted sold, whereas good bookshops don't do that. Good bookshops treat publishers with extreme suspicion, and they take nothing on trust, and they rely on their own instinct and their own taste.
So do you, at Waterstones, do you hire people to read all the books? Or is that...
No, I mean, for me, it's within a large chain. It's been a slow process of changing the culture within the business, but certainly it is about devolving responsibility to the local shops to sell what they want to encourage them to read, to encourage them to build the relationships with publishers so they get proofs and they can do the early reading, but also that they buy books and that they have an inquiry, and we don't stand in their way in terms of what they want to sell. And they, the very best of them will do that.
Because you're unambiguously against homogeneity.
Yes. And that's
cookie
because,
cutter.
It's the death of a bookshop. And the real death of a bookshop in chains, which I think we are the only chain that doesn't do it, is when there is a commercial relationship with the publisher for selling particular books across the estate. I mean, that's the basic model. Indigo, it'll be that. Barnes & Noble, it's that. It is everywhere, actually. It's, Foyles, which we've now just taken into ourselves, but Foyles still gets paid to sell books.
What do you mean?
Well, you get promotional income. You get paid an amount of money to put a book in your window.
Yeah, for buying shelf space, basically.
Exactly, and I don't think there is a single chain in the world that doesn't do that.
Right.
Except us, and we used to do it big time, and it was getting rid of that I think changed the fortunes of Waterstones.
Isn't that interesting? So what you're saying then is that each store manager and people at that store, you gave them free range to identify what was going to move in that local area and display whatever they thought was going to be the most popular in the most prominent places.
Yes, and reorder their books accordingly, and absolutely tacitly accept that as you do that, whilst you hope that most of your shops, and maybe even, many of your shops, maybe even most of your shops will get better as a result, some of them will get worse. Okay. And that you have to accept that you're just going to have some dunderheads out there who will make terrible decisions, and you'll have terrible bookshops. And we do have some shockingly awful bookshops. Luckily, if you don't do it well...
what do you do then? Do you fire them and bring on someone else?
You try and educate them, you try and encourage them to do it more sensibly. And more intelligently, and you bring them in and you train them, and if they're still doing it badly, you fire them. Or you move them under good people and you bring in somebody good.
And somebody good, again, does what?
I think they should, care. So they should have an enthusiasm. So a lot of it is frankly whether you care, whether you're looking at your books and you have an affinity for them. And you can get a very, very long way just on sheer enthusiasm and a desire to do the job well. Just keep it tidy and make sure. And then there are the special people who can add a magic to that, where they have a genuine talent either in the way they merchandise books and propose books, the way they recommend them. You can have an absolute dump of a shop looking awful, but if you've got the personality to drive sales through that, it's fine. We've got a fabulous shop in Horsham, and every time you walk in there, you just hold your head in your hands because.
But some people like that, though. Some people, I love it. Foyles used to be like that.
Yeah, and this shop, you just think, my God, why have you got plastic flowers? I mean, they look awful. But
they're not coming in for the flowers.
No, and this woman will just recommend a book for you, just bang. And the second you're in there, the place is fizzing, people are talking, she's laughing, the whole place is fun, and she sells, more than almost anyone. It is the most fabulous bookshop.
It's a function of her personality.
It's entirely her personality. Okay. Now that in a chain is impossible. They walk in and they go, it's a mess, no rules are being followed here at all. There's history next to fiction, next to, there's no sense to this. But it's brilliant because she's got it. She knows why things are there, and she uses her personality to bring it all together, and she uses her personality to inspire a team of booksellers around her. So it's going on even when she's not there.
And that's one of the Waterstones?
Yes, that's the Horsham Waterstones. Is the most amazing bookshop. Except it's a bit run down, it's a bit messy, it's a bit of those things. But
don't clean it up. You'll freak out all the customers.
Yeah, and above all, leave her and just don't get in her way. Let her do whatever she wants, because she's brilliant. And I think it is that allowing these people these booksellers who have a real talent and a real desire to just give it to their customers, give them the freedom to do so, and accept that, we do have some shockers as a result of doing that when they're not very good. And it will bite you in the back. But you can't and you shouldn't mess with the Horsham person in order to stop having a Leicester or one of our other
Cleaner ones.
Well, just boring, frankly. They're boring because the people don't really know what they're doing, or they're just not very good at it, and they're not reading enough, or they go, they're siloed in their tastes, or there are all sorts of reasons why you can run a bad bookshop, and I'm sure you've been into many bad bookshops. And I think our job within a chain is to use the power of a chain to train, to motivate, to promote, and to allow the eccentricities and the personalities that are positive to come through, and just be sensible about those ones where they either don't care or they're really just so up their intellectual backsides that they're getting it wrong.
You say train. What's the key training sort of?
I think good book selling can be trained, by which I mean there are skills, there is a science to book selling that can be taught.
Like what?
Like merchandising. How do you merchandise? What are the principles behind merchandising? By which I mean, how do you display a book? I mean, one of our simple things is, display your books, get them as the most interesting way you can, and then borrow a pair of glasses from somebody. So I could borrow my glasses from you, which will then fuzz out all the titles, because then I can't see it, but it keeps all the colour. And what does that look like?
You're very visual, aren't you?
Oh, yes, yeah. Book selling is visual. Book selling is 100%, or I think a huge amount about it is exciting the senses as well as the intellectual mind. You want people, they're coming in, you want them to look at the right books, be grabbed by the right books, be
But you can't change the color of the book. You have to, you
move
books
them
that are
around.
red, for example, and you put them there, and the blue ones maybe not right at the entrance.
Well, I can take a table of 30 titles, and I can set it up in a really boring way, and I can set it up in a really exciting way.
Okay, so how's exciting then?
It's the colour juxtapositions, it's the way that you've offset the different titles, it's the way that one title is leading to another title. It's about both. There's an intellectual thing that you're trying to excite, and there's a visual thing. So the visual is put on the glasses and see, does it really still grab you? If you put all the white books next to each other, it'll be really boring. They all morph into one another. You can't pick it out. So you've got to do that, and you've got to do, why does that book lead on to that book? And then there is a particular sort of special subject, really sort of university standard book selling, which says you put that book there to sell that book. And if that one's there, you'll sell more of that one. And if it's not, you won't.
What? And this is proven, is it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. 30 years of doing it, you definitely, if you want to sell a...
Did you learn this from the grocery business?
No, you learn it from being a bookseller for 30 years.
Okay.
If you sell books for 7 days a week for 30 years, you'll get there in the end.
So you have a kind of a guidebook that says you put this book here and this book there, and you're going to sell more?
Yeah, we have sessions with people about how do you sell a book? And there are rules around that are, if you follow them, you will do it better. Never recommend more than 3 books. As soon as you recommend the 4th book, the first one disappears. Well, if you started with the best one, just stop.
Yeah.
Work on it. Always try and, simple thing is, when somebody comes in recommending me a good book, well, what was the last good book you read?
Yeah.
If you don't ask that question, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
You don't want to know. You don't want my taste. I want to know what's in your head.
Yeah.
What's the last book? And if you go, it was a John Grisham, his last one. It was just amazing. Well, I know where to go now. And if you say a spy novel, I know where to go. And if you say it was Barbara Kingsolver, I know to go somewhere else. But until you tell me, I don't know. because I'm not trying to sell you the best book for you.
Right.
Whereas a lot of our booksellers, particularly younger ones, they want to sell their favourite books.
Well,
and
and
that's
they-
a big mistake.
And typically you'll see that, the
Yeah.
staff's picks.
Yeah.
Do you do that, or?
Yeah, no, we
Yeah.
we definitely do that, and mine is staff picks. They have to be good books, because one of our things is if you sell people good books, they're back quite quickly because you read good books quickly. But then it's just making sure you get the good book into the right person's hand, because one person's good book is not another person's.
No.
And that's the skill of it, constantly. And yes, at Daunt Books, actually, we don't do the staff recommends, which we do a lot of at Waterstones. But what we do use is display to do that. We put things up, but we're always theming them so that you should know which you should hit a table and then move straight on or be locked in there. So they're all very closely themed, trying to say, right, well, if that doesn't interest you, does that, and lead you through, also so that you can find your way around a shop subliminally. And Daunt Books, as you may or may not know, has got very little signage. So we have something called fiction and we have something called non-fiction. Yeah, and we have bays of books which are all the books we don't stock but which we know people like to buy. We have all sorts of, but we don't obviously call it, we just call it non-fiction. So we don't use, but what we're always trying to do is use the books to lead you on.
Yeah.
So that you know where you are, and you should intuitively, from the way we've set the shop up, you should know where to go, which is quite a difficult thing to do, but it's all about using covers, using the progression of your subjects, and you never have a clash, move people through, and it should allow a kid to find their way around a shop really quickly and easily.
So do you have advice to publishers about what kind of covers they should use to help you sell them?
A bit, yeah. Particularly if there are books we care about and they got terrible covers, then we definitely feed that back. But
Yeah, for
generally,
example, like if you can, Waterstones is so big that you can say, I don't like that cover, we're not going to sell that cover,
Yeah.
we want to sell another cover.
Yeah.
And here's what we think the cover should be, because we think we can sell more.
or rather, when you present that to me, which is, I'm really not, I'm taking a very small number of that. Come back with a better cover, and I'll take a lot more, and that would encourage them to come back with a better cover. But generally speaking, frankly, that's a relatively rare thing, and it's only with really important books that matter, where you're going, oh my God, I really was wanting to sell a lot of that book, and publishers sometimes do change them, and sometimes they tell us to get stuffed. And that's fine.
Yeah.
We'll get on with it as best we
Then
can.
you can just say, I told you so.
And sometimes we're wrong, and sometimes they're wrong.
Waterstones was acquired by a hedge fund, Elliott Advisors, this year. And a hedge fund, you don't really know who owns that.
Yeah, we do this one. It's a gentleman called Paul Singer.
Okay. So it's just one person?
It was set up by this guy, Paul Singer, who is one of the great sort of maestros of the hedge fund world, like George Soros. There are a few of them around who are, it's their company. It may be 15 billion or 50 billion or whatever it is, but there's a guy there.
Okay, that's
so I think
good to know.
in this case, it's it's
And
big,
he's a book lover?
no, I mean, in fact, it's his, but it's his company. In fact, we've been bought by the London office, so it is at one remove to him. No, I mean, he's a lover of making money.
Well, exactly. I mean, I guess Alexander Mamut, he wasn't a book. Was he a book lover?
In fact, he did have a great emotional attachment to books, an interest and intellectual engagement with books. But I think that helped him see that buying Waterstones could make him a decent turn. Whereas this was, and remember, it was a bust business. It was literally closing the next day. I mean, literally, not sort of closing, but literally.
I didn't know that.
So if he hadn't bought it at 7 a.m., boom, toast, closed, goes the way of borders.
It is kind of funny that a Russian billionaire has really saved.
He saved UK books.
Yeah, I mean, there's something wonderful about that. But then you look at what's going on in Russia,
Well, I think, I think it's more, look what's going on in the United Kingdom. I mean, we are going through Brexit, we're going through an insular period, we're going through a period where outsiders are bad, we want to be, only we
The whole
know how to
world's
do
going
things.
through that, though.
And then you've got, it was, luckily we were at a period when London was very international and very open, and this guy saved UK book selling. He wouldn't be saving it today because we wouldn't actually even probably let him in the country. I mean, it's just an insanity the way this country is going. Let alone the rest of the world, but this country has no excuse, and we are going through a catastrophic failure of political leadership. Anyway, luckily...
No, it's come up in every single conversation that I've had in the last number of days.
Yeah, and I think we as booksellers, it's also, we one of our roles in life, you're saying, why do we do it? We do it because we like selling books, we like making authors. One of the things also we like is civilizing the society in which we live, and I think that's a very important part. We have values, we have political opinions, we are definitely left of centre, we believe in inclusion, we believe in also, we are a money-making business, we're a capitalist business, not in any way denigrating that, but we are also a civilizing force, and we really don't like what's going on in the world at the moment, and we should campaign and be very vocal about that. And I think that our customers share our values to a very large degree, and to the extent that we can broaden that, it's an important part of what we do.
So why didn't your customers go out and vote against leaving then?
I think most of our customers did,
Right.
but there are an awful lot of people who aren't our customers who didn't. And also in the United Kingdom, we have a very strange, and maybe that's what's going on in other parts of the world at the moment. But our society was not a fair one, and there are too many have-nots and too few haves, and that gulf and a lot of what has gone on has just created a large number of people who feel very marginalised and uncared for. And I think that's again one of the things that our society
Well, it's capitalism, and that's what capitalism
very large
does.
parts of what capitalism does, but it doesn't need to actually. And I think again one of our things as booksellers, and it's probably the word stuck in my mouth, but as purveyors of thoughts and ideas and rationality, we should be helping that.
Amazon, after destroying the other chains, seems to be easing off the big discounts on books. Fair to say?
I don't know. I think
Which helps you.
Amazon is a very rational organization. I think that it maintains a differential in price between which, and it's perhaps as much what we're doing, and they're just coming up. They will always keep the difference. They will always undercut us. They will always be hugely effective and competitive force in the market. If there is some slightly less discounting, which there is slightly less, I think that's perhaps just because they don't feel quite the pressure. It's an algorithm, I don't think. But they're still unbelievably cheap. They're not making any money at what they do, I don't suppose.
Well, they're putting people out of business. That's their first goal, and they've achieved that.
And and maybe they're realizing that the price isn't going to do it with us anymore, certainly in this country.
Because you've got a wonderful experience that you're offering, and more intelligence.
Well, we're also a very unusual chain that's acting like an independent, so you can't actually get hold of us. We're a bit of a slippery squid that's, how on earth do you get hold of us? Because we don't press the same in all our shops. In fact, so we didn't just devolve responsibility in terms, but the bit that I think when I joined that my colleagues found most difficult, I said, fine, we're stopping all of this national pricing. You can price whatever you think is sensible. And they really struggled with that. And
They struggled with that kind of freedom?
Oh my God. And I do, and I still get it, which is people say, it was so much easier when you told us what to do.
Yeah, but you don't want easy, you want...
Well, yeah, but...
But you, don't you think that gives them more control over their own... Like, you're giving them control over their own little business, is what you're doing.
Exactly. But it's not easy. And...
You mean it was just they just wanted to mail it in, and that was...
Well, that is how, so a BNN or an Indigo, the email comes in and it says the price of the books this week is, and then you look at it and you go around your shop and you sticker everything up, and this you've got to change it all around.
Yeah, a robot could do that.
Yeah, and it's I would have thought. I mean, I just want to shoot myself if I had to do that.
Yeah.
So I'm definitely not going to ask my people to do it. But then when you say to them, yeah, just whatever you think, then they go, no, but hang on a minute, what do we think?
Right.
And it isn't easy, actually. What price do you sell this book at?
Well, you've got the publishers have put the price on it. You get to discount.
Yeah, but
it.
then you discount it.
Right.
So do you discount everything? Do you discount nothing? Do you discount in between? And the result is that it's taken probably I think we settled down about 2 years ago, so it took 5 years for people to begin to work out what to do. And we now discount very differently in different shops. In our mass marketplaces, we discount a lot. I mean, like 20-25% average discount. In our smartest shops, 0. And every single point in between. So if you're Amazon trying to work out where to play your algorithm, what do you do?
You're screwing with their algorithm.
What do? You can't. And if you walk in one day, it's at one price, and the next day it's at another price. But I think our customers understand it. Mm-hmm. Some people really don't want cheap books. Some people really do. Some people want some sorts of books to be cheap, but not other sorts. And I think it's about the bookseller to really work that one out.
One of the publishers I talked to just in the last few days has said that you're able to, or you do see the value in books. You don't, books are not overpriced. They're priced, they're a good deal.
And I think our bit is to say, I don't actually believe that. I think that it depends who the customer is. Mm-hmm. And we should, if we've got somebody who really, just can't afford, but wants to buy, but perceives the value of a book being less than the price stuck on it by a publisher, then we have to make that happen. But the customer who's very happy, it's a £20 book, that's fine. We don't need to do anything. And I think that allows, giving the bookseller that freedom to do it has actually changed the dynamic, and also changed the dynamic vis-a-vis Amazon in particular, which is why we stabilized it. And I think we needed to stabilize that perception of value, which is different, and do it differently up and down the land, but also even down to the individual, do it differently. Mm-hmm.
Why do you discount bestsellers? If there's a huge demand for a book, why are you discounting it?
I think there's a general perception of what's fair among customers, and I think with the very biggest books, there is, because they're half price in the supermarkets, they're half price on Amazon, you can buy them everywhere, because that is the nature of a bestseller. It is available everywhere. Then it's just a bit galling to pay twice as much in the bookshop.
Yeah, you pretty well have to follow up the supermarkets or whatever.
Yeah, so with the big book, there is a general perception, for example, that Michelle Obama will come out. Boom.
I saw that. You got 50% off on that.
Yeah. But the Michelle Obama, you can pre-order it on Amazon. There's huge. Amazon's one of its most effective things has been to drum up the pre-orders at half price or below.
Right.
We just need to match that. Frankly, if you're prepared to sign up now to have a book at half price, if we don't do that for you, you'll go to Amazon. And by doing it, we're finding now we are getting the first day sales, which we were really getting hammered on. We're no longer being hammered on.
But you still make 5% or whatever. You
still make a bit. You don't make a lot, but most importantly, you're keeping people in your bookshops,
right?
And you're conditioning them to buy the books from us, not them.
Yeah.
You've talked about vigilance, instinct, passion.
I think there's an interesting moment going on within bookselling now, which is which obviously as somebody who leads a chain bookstore, I'm focused on in particular, which is sort of why do we have chain bookstores? Should we have chain bookstores? What's the purpose of a chain bookstore? And you sort of looking 5-10 years ahead, where will chain bookshops be? Because in the United Kingdom, at least, generally in most metropolitan areas even, there only are chain bookstores. The independent sector is extremely small. It's in London. and then it's in small towns. That's it. There's nothing in between. There's no independent bookshop in any of our secondary cities, so almost none outside. So London.
Well, Bath is a secondary.
That's
different though, because it's
well, if you name, I can name you the independent bookstores, of which Mr. B's and Toppings are Daunt Books, Sando, Hayward Hill. But you're gonna run through those. Once you got through your hands, you're struggling a bit. You can just about get to your toes, and then you stop. There really are very few, and most of our independents now are in very small towns, just because they can afford the rents and the rates. But they're running really, really small bookshops. Proper. I mean, that's not the right word, but range holding, stock holding independent bookshops are now a rarity in the United Kingdom. So we need the chain, but then if the chain is failing, as it is pretty much everywhere in the world, actually irrespective of whether Amazon is present in that market or not, if you go around the world, you can go to markets where Amazon doesn't exist and where there's price maintenance, and the chains are in big trouble. And I think chain bookselling and that, and we've talked about that notion of the single planogrammed, identikit, cookie-cutter shop, it just doesn't work. It doesn't work anywhere. And we've slightly confused ourselves, so maybe Amazon was doing this to us, or the fact that pricing is doing it to us, the internet, or pricing, or the combination of the two. It isn't. It's actually that chain bookshops are just rubbish. But they're briefly alluring when they're new. When you build a new chain, because it's just so big and glossy and shiny, it's quite exciting, and it's just full of books as well.
Yeah, I mean,
but as it gets degraded and you get this dispirited workforce in a physical environment which is getting a bit older, and then you're dead. And it's that I think chain bookselling around the world is, apart from the Far East where they're still building shiny new ones, but the basic premise of the chain bookstore doesn't work.
And that's because they don't have an energized staff.
Don't have an energized staff, don't have the basic proposition of an identikit.
They don't have a local.
Doesn't work. You've got to be able to, and you can do it. Maybe Indigo is actually one of the ones that's interesting, which has sort of perverted the definition of a bookshop.
Well, yeah, that's the joke is, you have to really look hard to find the books.
But sort of in a way that's right, because they've said, okay, well, my thesis would be, well, they've said, well, this sort of cookie cutter thing doesn't work, so we'll go and put in the front of our shops and the basic proposition stuff that does work if you planogram it.
And you know what? If they're gonna do, if that's the price of keeping them.
Yeah, and it's clever, and in a way, I think that's rather clever. So maybe that is, and I think they're really a model actually of you're either going to have to go down my way of anarchy and just let it rip, and see if we can keep
a kind of a herd of cats, a herd of independent cats
which has its own problems, or you actually need to go. So I think for me, they're the other people who've really come up with an answer to how on earth do you redefine a chain bookshop to be something sensible.
Right. Well, something that's going to stay alive.
Yeah, stay alive.
And make a reasonable profit.
And keep people coming in and enjoying it.
Yeah. Self-effacement is the flip side of your self-belief.
Where does that come from?
I'm not sure where that came from. But my question is that because your father was a diplomat?
I don't think so. I think you are your own personality. I think I'm not uncommon. In fact, I think I'm amongst the vast majority of booksellers in being very introverted. I think many booksellers, if not most, are very introverted, and I can see why
which sort of goes against your idea of creating energy and being.
But introverts have energy.
But I mean,
but they are self-effacing, and they are the orchestra. They're the conductor and the orchestrator, not the guy up on the stage. And I think that's what many booksellers are. They're orchestrating it. And there's the people playing up on the stage is something else. And I'm certainly one of those, very introverted. But within my own shop, I'm very confident in what I do. And there's introverts are not lacking in confidence.
No.
They just don't like to show off or strut their stuff, and I think that's also important. I think in terms of how I like running a business as well, it's all about trying to encourage other people to do stuff rather than try and inevitably I do things like this which require one to sort of slightly mouth off, but that isn't.
Well, and also put up with really personal questions like that last one.
Yeah, I mean, but I sort of sit there but I think we are, generally we're quite a quiet folk, and we're a quiet tribe of people.
Yeah, that's why, as I say, that whole thing about an energized, really social
maybe
beehive didn't really fit with my. When I go to a bookstore, I don't want people bugging me. I just want to go there and look at the books.
But actually, if you go back, what I was saying is the energy of our customers. It's the energy. So when it's not the showing off and the strutting of the booksellers, it's the energy that comes from having customers, people reading, enjoying themselves. You can get an energy just from a place that's where people are enjoying themselves. It's not the flamboyance and the noise that I'm referring to. I think it's just that sort of sense of excitement that you get from coming in places where it's been really looked after, and it's clever and it's bright and it's vibrant, and people are enjoying themselves, by which I mean not sort of singing songs and doing tap dances, just opening up books and
and really experiencing pleasure.
Yep.
This isn't directly to do with book selling, but the fact that she's going to be a wealthy woman, but the recent Booker Award winner used prize money to pay off a debt, and there's a similar sort of situation with the Giller Prize in Canada. It just speaks to the fact that the income for writers has gone
income
down
of writers
in the last
has
10, 20 years
gone, which is a function of the structure of the publishing industry to a degree, because the publishing industry itself has prospered mightily, and parts within it have definitely. I mean, when I first started bookselling, and indeed, for quite a long time after I started bookselling, to go and visit the publishing companies, you would go to the extremities of London. You'd go down to World's End, which is the end of the King's Road, down in Fulham. You have to. I bicycle everywhere. It's a long old bicycle ride.
You want to go and see. Thin. Yeah.
Hardly, but if you wanted to see Weidenfeld Nicholson, so the Hachette predecessor, you had to cross the river and go to the back end of Clapham and find a scrappy office. You went to the smartest was Penguin, who were sort of off the back and round the back of Kensington High Street, which wasn't actually as smart as it sounds. Now it's really easy. You just go down the Thames and you go to one marble palace, and then you can walk down and you get a view of St Paul's and Houses of Parliament, and then you can go across the other side where you get a different sparkling view. The most expensive real estate in London. Before the big ones are in the palaces, that's 70% of our trade.
Yeah, okay.
They're in palaces. That's who pays authors. Then you drop down the pecking order, and you really drop, and you get to and the smaller guys are in Bloomsbury, but they're in pretty genteel, as you know, and Bloomsbury's they're doing quite nicely, thanks very much. So they're doing all right, and the agents are doing pretty all right, but the authors aren't, and it's part of the sort of all or nothing element to it. Sales are concentrated perhaps in ways that they weren't before.
So in other words, it's a bit like society. There's a very small percentage of authors that are super rich, and most of them are relatively poor. Is that it?
And clearly Kindle has concentrated. If you do well commercially, then the Kindle sales will come as well. So the royalties that come from that, so it's difficult for a author to make a living, and too much is published.
They've been saying that Geoffrey Faber was saying that in the 20s.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they've been saying it for forever.
Certainly the 30 years I've been bookselling, and we've been saying exactly the same. And we've also been saying Christmas comes later, which is one of the most absurd things. We can't be coming later for the 30th year in a row, but that's certainly what we always say. What should we as booksellers be doing? And I think one of our responsibilities is to identify upcoming new authors to read and discover and promote.
And you certainly are doing that. I was just looking at your list here. I mean, this is, you've got a whack of authors that are reading at the
And
store
many of which you've never heard of as well.
I haven't.
Some of which you have, and some of which you think, goodness me, it's Penelope Lively's story.
Yeah, I just saw that. Yeah.
So, and authors also have to work really hard. They're doing festivals, they're doing these events, and you're looking at a little one, but Helena Kennedy was last night in my bookshop in Marylebone High Street in Daunt Books. Mm-hmm. He was in Daunt Books. People are working really hard.
Politician, right?
He's former politician.
Yeah.
New book on France. Authors having to work hard. But the ones who are working hard, I think, are probably doing just about all right. The Anna Burnses of this world, who write, books of quite narrow intellectual interest, will sell a few thousand copies, and the royalties don't cascade down from a few thousand copies.
So you're saying, from your perspective, what you can do is offer them a forum to.
I think it is one of our responsibilities is to try and not fail the really good book, but also we are about curating. So to the extent that the book isn't quite right, I'm afraid I don't think that's not something that we should shy away from saying. We have our own problems within our industry, in which pay in bookselling, in retail bookselling, is just abysmal. And unless we can sort that out, which is very much sort of, I feel is the biggest challenge that I'm facing at the moment, is how do I raise booksellers' salaries?
The people that
work in the bookshops.
The floor
and we are a retail trade.
Well, it's easy for you to do that. You just take less profit.
You have to make the profit to run. You have to make a profit to survive. You then, as you make more profit, have to share that with your staff. Otherwise, there's going to be a problem. You can't just, as you get more profitable, assuming you can get more profitable, you can't just trouser that. Mm-hmm. But bookselling has never been profitable, really. And at any point, Len Riggio might have made a bit of money out of it, but he probably made it more out of the other sides of his business. So how do we increase the profitability of the business and reinvest a lot of that in our staff? And I think there is a virtuous cycle to be had there. If you invest more in your staff, you'll keep them and you'll retain them and you'll have a better motivated. And that's certainly the Daunt Books model.
I was just about to say, yeah.
Absolutely the Daunt Books model. Pay people well, keep them, give them real proper careers, allow them to do all the things, the aspirational things that these very intelligent, middle class, dedicated professional people should aspire for, and if you can deliver that, then you'll keep them and you'll sell more, and it is a virtuous cycle. Within a chain, that hasn't happened yet, and we have to do that. It's beginning to, and we're definitely beginning to deliver back to our staff, and it is definitely having a positive impact.
So that's
but
your
we got
goal?
a way to go. That's definitely the goal.
And so you're committed to sticking it out with Waterstones for the next 10 years?
I will stick it out until I'm told to do it differently to the way I'm doing it, because I only have plan A. There is no plan B.
Well, plan B is Daunt Books.
It's plan B.
Because you still own them, right?
Exactly.
And is there, incidentally, is there any kind of conflict of interest there? Is the fact that you're getting all sorts of interesting insider information through Waterstones?
Oh, no, it all flows the other way. There's nothing interesting about Waterstones. Nothing. There's a lot that's interesting about Daunt Books. And I think, one of the challenges, how do you make Waterstones much, much more like Daunt Books? Yeah. So that's the plan A. There is no other, and as you say. But if I'm asked to compromise that, I'll just say no, thanks very much.
Well, and you're fortunate
to be in that position. And I'm fortunate enough also just the generational accident of being part of my generation. Which is, we bought houses when they were cheap and all of those kind of things. And it is desperately unfair for this current generation.
Yeah, it really is. So difficult for them to achieve what we did.
It is madness.
You dropped the apostrophe for IT reasons.
I'm not quite sure. To be honest, we dropped the apostrophe because I'd arrived at Waterstones then, changing an immense amount, working quite hard and quite tired, and they said, we want to drop the apostrophe, and I went, it's just whatever, I don't care. Actually, I shouldn't. I should have said, why? I mean, why? It's just stupid. Anyway, we did. Real reason I should have stuck to my guns is it's ugly. It was so much nicer. I mean, look at it. It should have an apostrophe. It was much more attractive with one.
It's true, isn't it? Yeah, it just looks, there's something wrong with it.
But it is annoying to type it.
Well.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Why
don't you put it back?
If you go around the shops, we I hate spending money, so we're trying, and I do have a real temper tantrum when I find that it's been taken away, when somebody spent money to take it away. So generally it exists, but it is much easier. You have one thing, so the machine only has one, which doesn't have it. And I sort of got used to it now. So.
Okay.
But as long as you don't think it was a good idea, because it wasn't.
No, I don't like it.
No, I don't know. Me neither.
We talked about regional buying, and apparently that reduced returns from 25 to 7%. Is that right?
I think we're about 3 now.
So, just so I'm clear, you would get to return whatever you want. Is that right? But you're down to 3%. That's really helpful for the publishers. Right, it's a function of you
really
buying too much,
or well, returns are simply a measure of bad buying.
The more returns that a buyer has, the more likelihood he's not going to hang around the company for too long.
The industry is addicted to it, and it still goes on everywhere else. I mean, we just bought Files, and they have 15% returns. It's just insanity. Daunt Books has 0. We don't return. We return event stock and dated guides. That's it, which is 0. We'll get Waterstones to 0 reasonably soon. But the real problem with, and the pernicious side of well, there are lots of bad things about returns, is it results in books sitting in front of customers until they're returned that they just don't want to buy.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of
wasted
books sitting
space
there. But just you end up filling up shops with the books people don't want to buy, which is insanity. It's really dispiriting work for booksellers, and lots of work, packing them up, sending them back. 25% returns, which is what I came into, is they've all come in and then they want to turn around and go out. It's like 50% of your workload is dealing with stuff that you never sell, apart from the environmental.
Well, they remain to them, I guess, do they?
Publishers remain to them.
Yeah.
Publishers actually don't mind returns, and they're more worried about them being dropping.
They're more worried what?
About them disappearing, because then they'll say, well, we won't take risks.
Sorry, you're losing me here.
Publishers like returns because they see them not as a measure of failure, but as a measure of taking risk. So they would like new book, something, they got the new Anna Burns. If you take enough and spread it out there, I might sell them. And if you don't, and unless you're taking those risks and putting that stock out there,
right?
I don't have a chance.
You're giving that book as much opportunity as possible. Even if it doesn't sell, you've given it a good opportunity.
You've given it a good go, and then you send the books back.
Right.
And
okay.
Given that the actual cost of producing books is relatively low, that's something that they wish to see. So as they've seen returns rates drop, mine is that we should be able to do that without having returns, simply through the merchandising, through the proper display of books. And actually, to put a book face out, you only need 1. You don't need 10. And since you shouldn't be putting on a table a unknown, unproved book at all, in fact, what you do is you put the 1 out there, and the 9 sit at the back, and then you send them all back. And that's just a waste of everybody's time and money. But we've got it now pretty much under control. But my internal thing is we just need to get rid of them, and until we do, our buying processes aren't working properly. And I don't think our buying processes are sort of halfway to where they ought to be, and we are about to change them again.
This might be a bit dated, but you want to get back into airports? Are you already back into airports? Is there some big contract?
W.H. Smith dominate travel, what we call travel, so that's railway stations and airports. I love selling books wherever I can, so yes, I'd like to be there, but the economics of it have to. I don't like selling books at a loss, and we don't really have experience of it yet, so our ability to sort of know what to bid is rather less than theirs, and the incumbent always has an advantage. But Waterstones used to sell lots of books in airports, and it was a big part of the business, and then my predecessors lost it. Okay. And I would very much like to get back in there, just because I like selling books.
It's interesting, just my experience here in London, I've noticed that Marks and Spencer's and Tesco have these little express stores. I wonder if you've thought about doing something like that, like having little express Waterstones.
Well, our smallest shop's 700 square foot, and this is 50,000. So we're running the whole gamut. And we run unbranded shops, which I get castigated for periodically. So our smaller shops are not called Waterstones; they're called the local, wherever they are, Southwell Books, Rye Books, Upton Books, and the logic behind that is that I think a Waterstones has a certain size. There's an expectation within a Waterstones that you're going to find all the things that you do find within Waterstones in terms of it will have a section for everything, and that's a nonsense when you get down to a very small size. Which is why I never opened up small shops. I've opened up a lot of small shops since I joined. I obviously have a heritage of being a small shop bookseller, but calling them Waterstones was a bit of a nonsense. It was also when I was going through a period of really trying to shake Waterstones and say, you've got to think of your shops as your own, and genuinely, workers, we've been talking all over about that. And a small anecdote for you. When I first joined, I was going, why have we got a uniform? Because we did. Everybody wore a uniform.
Oh, no. Cookie cutter uniform.
Black with a W. And everybody wore it. And I said, let's stop the uniform. And they went, nah, because our customers won't know who the booksellers are. Booksellers said no, for all sorts of reasons. One, our customers won't be able to understand who we are. B, you don't pay us enough to afford our own clothes. And it's a dirty, mucky job, so... you're not saving money on me. It's all about all sorts of reasons. Nobody came out of uniform. And in fact, I had to beg the woman I've already mentioned in Horsham, who runs the Mad Shop, to just come out of uniform. And she said, no, but then, she was as much part of this culture where you couldn't. But she did, slightly reluctantly, and said it's fine. And that was in June, 2 years after I had started the campaign to get them out. I never tell people to do anything here. I try and persuade them to. And then Ormskirk, which is a tiddly, about the smaller shop as we got outside Liverpool, really ordinary shop, came out of uniform in September, and in October the rest of the estate came out. Can you explain that to me?
The rest of the estate meaning what?
280 shops came out of uniform.
That's a pretty influential little shop in Liverpool.
It was that Horsham went, and it's still a chain, and they know I've been saying it, but they also know they got their regional managers, and they also have a history of if you do something wrong, you get shot. They thought, well, she's mad, she gets away with everything because she's a brilliant bookseller. We'll stay tight. Ormskirk comes out of uniform, and everyone goes, that's a crappy little shop. They haven't shot them. We'll come out of uniform. And they all came out, and lo and behold, when we had a thing where you'd have a few individual booksellers within shops still with their uniforms. I haven't seen a uniform now in months.
But what about the argument that it's cheaper for them to wear that than their own clothes? That was a silly argument.
It's just a stupid argument, and it's stupid that you clearly customers know if you're a bookseller, if you're behaving like a bookseller.
Yeah, or you can have a little sticker on your...
And some shops wear little lanyards. Yeah. Big shops do, or they just feel that's a security blanket, is what I call it. But it's a reflection of how slow it is to change chains and change attitudes, but also how deep-grained some of these sort of crazy things can be. And I can't remember when I got onto that. You'd asked me a perfectly sensible question. I gave you a long and irrelevant answer to.
Well, it's all got to do with individuality, I think.
Yes.
And that seems to be the key for a lot of the things you've done, freeing up that independent spirit and entrepreneurial
and trying to
energy.
But again, one of the things that I'm now working on, which goes back to the pay thing, is I want to move. We have hourly pay, which is what all retail has, big retail in the United Kingdom. You work so many hours, you get paid per hour, and but we have 3 levels of seniority. Come in as a bookseller, you get promoted to a senior, you get promoted to what we call a lead. So in your career, which most people do, they don't go into management, you will have 2 pay rises in 40 years or 30 years, however long you do it. As you get promoted, everybody's on the same. And it's mad. It's utterly, and I can't understand.
Well, it's like a bureaucracy, because it seems like if one person is busting their tail and the other person is doing nothing and they make the same money, that's dispiriting.
And that's how it works. In my own business, at Daunt Books, we have performance-related pay. Everybody has an individual salary, except for, so that's what most people have. And then the hourly people we do have a few. They are part-timers, weekend staff, people coming through, which we have a few of. Otherwise, you have a salary, and if you work less than full-time, you have a pro rata salary, and you have a review every 6 months, and every year you have your salary reviewed, and if you're good, you get more, and if you're not, you stay the same.
You don't do commission then?
No.
Okay.
But that's what we're trying to work through at Waterstones at the moment, and it's an interesting one where everybody's going, it's unfair. They like the egalitarian side of it. They don't like the notion that performance-related pay means your performance is being assessed.
They don't like meritocracy.
But they'll get there. It'll be like the uniform. It'll just take us a while.
Just finally, you've said that if bookshops go, they'll never come back.
I think what I mean by that is if the chain goes, so you've got 280 big shops, and many of them in really prime, fabulous locations and in big shops, those will never come back. Independents will spring up, but independents will be like Topping and like Daunt Books and like Mr. B's and Sando, where you're in the back streets. And our big bookshops in Newcastle and Liverpool and Edinburgh and Glasgow and here and Birmingham, we've got big, whacking great, fantastic and expensive landmark bookshops. They will never come back if they close. There's no way that any independent could run those. The financial risk, the landlords, plus also they'll turn into an Apple store or another retailer will get them in. So bookshops
Amazon. They're getting into bricks and mortar a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah, small shops. I hesitate ever to write Amazon off, but then they're not yet what any book lover would call a bookshop.
No.
They're something else. But yes, they of course would have the financial power to do so. But if we were to lose those, absolutely amazing shops, the Brighton shop, we got one everywhere. Those won't come back. The little shops in the small towns, they're fine. Independents would replace them in time. It would all readjust. But the big metropolitan shops, they don't come back, which would be a great shame.
So you just have to stay in business then? That's
we have to stay to business. And I think the parallels with libraries in this country, where a little subset which you hopefully don't know anything about. But one of the shames of our current situation is so many libraries are being closed, and again they won't come back. And if you have these, particularly these neighborhood things, a lot of them set up with Carnegie endowments, and how they feel that they can justifiably sell a Carnegie library for money to get them through a little moment when they need a bit of, which they then fritter away on rubbish, and then there's no library. And it's a real catastrophe going on there. Some of it's self-inflicted.
Because libraries are so much more than book lending.
They are. I think if one was sort of brutal about, which I am, then libraries should be looking to themselves and to justify themselves and be fighting harder to use their resource in a sensible way. But nonetheless, councils, because it's devolved to the local government level, are selling off real estate and canning the library, and it's awful.
Okay, let's not leave it on that one.
But I'm very optimistic. I think, given where we were 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, your profit's up 80%. Is that the number I read?
Yeah, you always get large percentages with small amounts of money, of course.
Sure enough.
But I'd much rather when somebody says, "Oh, your profits are up 10%," because it means I'm making quite a lot. But the business was bust. I mean, losing substantial amounts of money, about to close. And then Kindle came along, which was a huge problem.
And then you took on Kindle and sold it for, how long did you do that for?
That was, again,
in the store?
Not for very long. And that was, again, entirely about the psychology of my booksellers, which I don't think nobody understood at the time. I had a group of booksellers who were pretty traumatized. I mean, they knew they had come to the brink of bankruptcy. I'd come in, we did a brutal initial cost cutting. I think very intelligently, and I think the one thing I would be most proud of is the way that I sacked people. We did it, which is never a nice thing to do, and is traumatic and ghastly, but we did it not in the way that some people do it, which is just to take out layers, and it's take out layers of people. That's how traditionally people do it.
Yeah.
And, it's gone on at BNN recently, where they just took out a layer of this level of, and I didn't do that at all. I said, right, the whole bang lot of you are going into consultation, and we can't afford to employ you all. We don't need to employ you all. Sales have dropped massively. So for both those reasons, you are all going into consultation, and we are interviewing you, and the very best of you we will keep, and those of you who want to and are motivated and really care about this business will stay, and those of you who are either we don't think are very good or really don't want to will go. And it was traumatic, because it always is. But we definitely lost, sort of 90% of the people we lost were people who weren't committed to the business in one way or the other, which made it much easier. But going back to your Kindle problem, we had that going on. We had sales dropping substantially with the success of Kindle, and we had a workforce who were frightened of it. They thought it was bad. I don't think Kindle's bad. I think reading's good. That's what we're in the business for. If people read in libraries, if people read on Kindle, we should accept that and actually be pleased about it.
Yeah, so it's just another package.
It's just another medium.
Packaging of the reading, yeah.
And we just need to harness it and work with it and say, well, yes, of course you're using a Kindle, but you still got to come into my bookshops and choose books, and you might read some of them in Kindle and you'll read some of them physical, but...
And you wanted to provide the best, and you thought this was the best?
No, I just wanted to...
The best Kindle.
I wanted my booksellers not to be frightened of the Kindle. And that's quite difficult. How do you can... So I started off by saying, we're not frightened of Kindle. It's good. Kindle's fine. People are reading. But all they wanted to do was close their doors, and if somebody took out their phone, they go, Christ, they're going to photograph the book and then order it on Kindle, and it was all bad. And by bringing Kindle in and saying... Yeah, here it is. There's nothing to be frightened about. Sell it. It's fine. I think it lifted the fear of Kindle and this sort of sense of doom that this sort of thing was just going to eat them and kill them, and also sort of demystified it. And that was why, rather than selling a few more Kindles. I think they were going to sell anyway. But the controversial thing was not doing Nook or Kobo, in joining the alliance against Amazon. And that was because I fundamentally believe that actually at the end of the day, you've got to work in the interests of your customer. And I couldn't see how either of those platforms were truly going to compete with Amazon. And then you'd be selling a product you didn't really believe in, which we should never do otherwise. And that would have just exacerbated the problem for my booksellers, not solved it. And in the fullness of time, I think, has shown that was, broadly speaking, probably the right call.
Any final thoughts then on the reasons for your success?
Well, also the reasons why I think that we should feel optimistic is that if you can create enjoyable bookshops, energetic bookshops, as I say, bookshops in which the booksellers are having fun and know that it's all working for them and that their customers are enjoying life in the shop and sales are going up, not down. If you get that, you get yourself into a virtuous place where the way that you're able to start doing more events. We never used to do events like this. Not like we're looking at a sheet of really quite interesting and diverse events. They're not signings then, which are a passive event. These are talks. These are discussions between two authors taking place in an evening.
It's an intellectual engagement.
Yeah, and we're in a big shop, so in fact you've got two or more going on the same day, and more will be dropped in. There are evenings when you've got 5 or 6 events going on in this shop.
Yeah.
And they're doing dance classes and things that aren't about books as well. They're just interesting things. It's a really fun place to go. And I think if we're harnessing that up and down the land, we've got something that's going to endure, and it doesn't really matter. We can now, we're facing the prospect of a serious economic dislocation and retail downturn. We've got shops closing around us. Things, the headlines are really dire in this country. But we're feeling, and I'm feeling, I don't like that. I'd much rather it was positive news and a benign environment. But notwithstanding that, I'm feeling very confident that we will sail through that. And we've got some of our most challenged and just dreadful locations for shops. I use Newport Gwent as an example, which is in Wales. It's a very beautiful high street that's been destroyed by the council and by people moving out. So there's huge empty department stores, really wonderful Victorian buildings. One was a BHS, went bust. One was an M&S, they moved to the out-of-town shop. One was a big department store, went bust. Debenhams, which is going to close. We've got about 1/3 of the buildings actually in occupation, 2/3 shuttered up, so not even. It really is like you see photographs of sort of wasteland locations. That's what it's like. There isn't even a McDonald's. There's just a few fast food things and a few banks, and then us. And our sales haven't changed. They've stayed pretty much smack on. Nice team. It's a community place. Bit of an elderly client base because the employment in the town has been stripped out of it. But they're selling books. It's a refuge. You go in there after 4 o'clock in the afternoon. It's full of teenagers who've just come out of the schools because there ain't anywhere else to go. It's selling stuff, and it's a real hub of a community. And it's become
Coffee shop, I imagine.
No. This is a small.
Okay.
Really down at heel place. We haven't spent anything on it, I'm afraid.
Don't have to, I guess.
Don't have to, because it needs good booksellers in there who are enjoying what they're doing, who are keeping their shoplifting down, because it's that sort of a place, but just keeping it as a friendly place. And it's part of the community. And I think the very fact that it's part of the community is keeping this commercial engine going as well as a community side to it. And we got that as well as these kind of places where it's just fizzing. And frankly, if you're young, 23, and you need to go and pick up somebody, where better to come? Come to a bookshop. You've got a conversation to be made, and it's full of young people having fun. And I think that demographic thing, you come into these shops, they're full of young people. We walk out there now.
I saw it, yeah. I felt old.
Yeah, you do. They're all in their 20s.
Yeah.
It's a place, and that's what I mean about energy. It's energy's coming from the customer base here. They're just young people and they look amazing. And you feel it's really old, but it's a fun place to be. And if we can keep that going up and down the line, which we are, we're not closing shops, we're opening shops.
Yeah.
That's
and you're
really
planning
quite
on
a positive
more,
thing.
opening
and lots
quite a
more.
few more. Yeah. Well, that's terrific. And I know why that your company is successful. It's because you are so enthusiastic, and it's contagious.
Well, I think I'm freeing up, and I've been lucky enough to have the booksellers who are here, there's just so many people who are really good at the thing, and it was just giving them a bit of confidence and lifting their spirits and letting them get on with it. It's a great job. The less you do, the better you are.
Well, I'll let you get on with it.
Thank you very much.
And thank you for taking the time to talk to me. It's been lots of fun.
Thank you very much.
I've been speaking with James Daunt. Thanks again.
Thank you very much. Thank you.